My sister slept with my husband while I worked 2 jobs to support us. You're crazy and insecure. He laughed in my face. My parents chose her over me when I begged for help. 3 years later, she appeared at my door with a baby, homeless and broke. I smiled and whispered, "Karma is beautiful." Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into the story. I'm Paige, I'm 27 years old, and I've been sitting here in my new studio, just looking out the window and thinking about my life. It's strange how things turn out. I realized I've never really, truly talked about how much my childhood, my family, shaped the person I am today. I grew up in a very middle-class family right in the Midwest. You'd think that would mean we were pretty normal, pretty average. We had a decent house in a decent neighborhood. But when it came to favoritism, my family made it painfully, agonizingly obvious who the star of the show was. And it was not me. My sister, Brooke, who is 3 years older than me, was the golden child. She's blonde, always been brimming with this effortless confidence, and was just the apple of everyone's eye. Now, I'm not saying she didn't deserve some of the attention. She was talented in her own ways, I guess. She was outgoing, she was a cheerleader, she always had the lead in the school play. But the way my parents treated her compared to me, it was just like night and day. I honestly can't remember a single time growing up when I didn't feel like the backup plan, the afterthought. Let me give you a few examples, just so you understand what I'm talking about. When I was about 9, Brooke, who was 12, decided she wanted to take ballet lessons. Just like that, on a whim. My parents signed her up at the best, most expensive dance studio in town. It was across town, a 40-minute drive. They drove her there 4 times a week. My mom would sit in the observation room, reading a magazine, but looking up every time Brooke did a turn. They'd sit through her long, boring rehearsals. They bought her all the fancy gear, the little pink satin shoes that she'd scuff up, the black leotards, the sheer skirts, all of it. The costumes for her recitals were covered in glitter and tulle and cost a fortune. And they'd take her out for ice cream after every single performance, big or small. Me? A year later, when I was 10, I wanted to join an art class. I was super into sketching. I loved drawing faces and landscapes, and I had this little sketchbook I carried everywhere. I found a flyer at the library for a local program at the community center. It was $25 for 8 weeks. I was so excited. I highlighted it, I circled it, I brought it to my mom while she was making dinner. I begged her to sign me up. She just patted my head, that dismissive little pat, and said, "Maybe next year, sweetheart. We're stretched a little thin right now after Brooke's recital costumes." Well, next year came. And it went. I asked again. "Oh, honey," she said, not even looking up from the mail, "that's on Tuesdays. That's when Brooke has her new piano lessons." And guess what? No art class for Paige. Ever. I just learned to stop asking. I taught myself to draw from library books. Then there was the whole birthday thing. This one really stung. For Brooke's 16th birthday, my parents got her a car. Now, it wasn't brand new or anything. It was a used sedan, a 10-year-old Toyota, but it was her car. They put a big red bow on it. She had freedom. She could drive herself to ballet, to the mall, out with her friends. When I turned 16, 2 years later, I didn't even bother asking for something like that. I knew better. I didn't even get my driver's license right away because I knew there'd be no point. What I got for my 16th birthday was a small cake from the grocery store, the kind with the waxy, too sweet frosting, and a card that said, "We're so proud of you, Paige." I remember sitting at the dining room table, just the 4 of us, the silence thick after we finished the cake. I stared at that card, thinking, proud of what? Surviving another year as the family's invisible child. I went to my room and just stared at the wall, feeling that familiar, cold ache of being second best. Graduation was the exact same story. When Brooke graduated high school, my parents threw this massive party. They rented out a banquet hall at a local hotel. They invited half the town, all their friends from work, all of Brooke's popular friends. They made a huge, huge deal out of it. There was a slideshow of her life, set to music. My dad gave a speech about how proud he was, how she was destined for greatness. When it was my turn, 2 years later, we had a small barbecue in the backyard. Just a few neighbors and my one aunt who always smells like mothballs. It felt more like a let's just get this over with kind of event than a celebration. My dad clapped me on the back, the smell of charcoal on his hands, and actually said, "Well, we already did the big party for Brooke, so this is just more low-key." Low-key. Right. That was me. Low-key Paige. The low-key daughter. What really stung, what really showed me where I stood, was how they handled college. I worked my absolute butt off in high school. I wasn't naturally brilliant like Brooke always seemed to be, so I had to study. I spent my Friday nights in the library. I had straight A's, I volunteered at the animal shelter, and I got into one of the top programs in the country for fragrance chemistry. It was my dream. I've always been obsessed with scents. I wanted to create custom perfumes. I remember getting the acceptance letter. My hands were shaking. I ran downstairs, screaming with joy. I found my parents in the living room, watching TV. I waved the letter at them. I got in. I got into the program. They just looked underwhelmed. My mom smiled that tight little smile of hers and said, "That's great, honey. That's far away, isn't it? But we can't help much with the tuition. You know, Brooke's MBA payments are still a lot." Brooke. Of course. Brooke had gone to a private university for her undergrad, racking up debt. Then she decided to get an MBA, adding even more. And my parents had co-signed all of it. They were drowning in payments for her education. They didn't even have a college fund for me. To make it worse, Brooke had moved back home after she got her undergrad degree because, surprise, she didn't land her dream job right away. And my parents just bent over backward to make her comfortable. They completely redid the guest room for her. It's her second apartment, my mom would coo. They helped her with her car bills, her phone bill, and they even paid for her to go to some expensive 3-month coding boot camp she decided to quit after just 6 weeks. It just wasn't for her, my dad said, like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, I had to work 2, sometimes 3, part-time jobs all through college to afford my school and my tiny, shared apartment. I was waitressing until 2 a.m., my feet aching so bad I wanted to cry, smelling like fry grease and stale coffee. And I was a receptionist at a dentist's office on the weekends, just sitting under fluorescent lights, filing charts. No help from them. No handouts. Just me, grinding it out, while they acted like Brooke's personal cheerleaders. Even when I came home to visit for holidays, which I started to do less and less, the little things just showed how much they favored her. Brooke would casually mention, "Ugh, I have a job interview, I have nothing to wear," and my mom would take her on a full-on shopping spree at the mall. I would see the bags in the back seat of the car. I'd save up for 3 months just to buy a single decent pair of jeans for my waitressing job, and my mom would see the bag and say, "Oh, didn't you just buy clothes last month? You need to be better with your money, Paige." There was also this weird, cruel habit my parents had of just brushing off my achievements. When I got my first real internship at a local fragrance company, a paid internship in my field, I was so excited. I called them during their dinner. I could hear them chewing. My mom's first response after I told her was, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Brooke has a second interview for that marketing job? It's a really good salary." Like, cool. That's great. But can I just get 5 seconds to talk about my life? I remember one Christmas that just solidified how much of an afterthought I was. My parents always went all out with gifts for Brooke. Designer bags, new gadgets, you name it. That year, she got this expensive new watch and a custom leather bag for work that must have cost a fortune. I saw the receipt by accident. I got socks and a $25 Target gift card. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that they acted like it was equal. My mom literally said, with a straight face, "We spent the same amount on you both." Sure, Mom. Sure you did. The favoritism, It wasn't just annoying. It messed with my self-esteem. I constantly felt like I just wasn't good enough. Like no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, Brooke would always be the one they cared about more. And the thing is, Brooke didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she just didn't care. She'd just bask in all the attention, and I'd just exist. It wasn't until I was older that I realized how much this dynamic shaped me. I worked harder than I probably needed to because I felt like I had something to prove. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter. But at the same time, I learned to be fiercely independent. I had to be. I couldn't rely on anyone else, not even my own family. I don't think my parents were trying to be cruel. I think they just genuinely believed Brooke needed more attention because she was, well, more outgoing, more ambitious, more their idea of success. But that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it hurt any less. Anyway, during my final year of school, I was juggling a million things. I had my advanced classes, my 2 part-time jobs, and my unpaid internship. One of those jobs was at a high-end perfume boutique in the city. It wasn't glamorous, I was mostly just stocking shelves, cleaning glass counters, and running the register, but I loved it. I spent my days surrounded by beautiful fragrances. On my breaks, I'd experiment with scents in the back room, mixing oils, taking notes in my old sketchbook. I loved helping customers find their signature perfumes. For me, it wasn't just a job. It felt like a small step toward my dream. That's where I met Julian. He came into the shop one rainy Tuesday afternoon. He was looking for a custom scent for a client. He was tall, polished in a way that wasn't flashy, and had this easy, quiet confidence about him. At first, I thought he was just another wealthy guy who wanted something expensive to impress someone. We got those all the time. But he surprised me. He actually seemed interested in the process. He didn't just want to buy something, he wanted to understand it. He asked about the base notes, how scents were layered, what inspired my own little creations I had on the side. I showed him one I was working on, a blend of sandalwood and cardamom. He was fascinated. We spent nearly an hour just talking and working on the perfect blend for his client. By the time he left, I was impressed by how down-to-earth he was. He wasn't flashy about his success, even though it was obvious he had money. He came back a week later to pick up the final product, and instead of just saying thanks and leaving, he stayed to chat. Over time, Julian became a regular at the shop. He'd stop by just to talk about business, creativity, or life in general. I learned that he ran a tech startup that had recently hit it big, but he never, ever flaunted it. He was more interested in hearing about my studies and my goals. He'd ask, "How is that chemistry final?" or "How's that new blend coming along?" No one had ever taken that kind of genuine interest in me before. Not my family, not anyone. Eventually, he asked me out. I remember being so nervous. I didn't know if I was ready for anything serious. I had so much going on, and the idea of dating someone successful like Julian felt intimidating. I almost said no, but he made me feel at ease. We just went for coffee. He didn't care that I was still a student working 2 jobs. He said he admired my drive and my passion. He made me feel seen in a way I never had before. Our relationship moved quickly, but it just felt so natural. Julian was supportive in ways I wasn't used to. When I had late-night assignments, stressed out and crying over textbooks, he'd send me takeout so I wouldn't forget to eat. A text would come through, "Food's at your door. Don't forget to eat." When I was stressed about my final exams, he'd remind me to take breaks and breathe. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he became my biggest cheerleader. When Julian proposed, a year after we started dating, I was completely stunned. I knew we were in a good place, but I just didn't expect it so soon. He planned this whole elaborate evening. Dinner at a rooftop restaurant, soft music, candles, the works. When he pulled out the ring, this beautiful, simple diamond, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. I said yes because I finally felt like I was someone's first choice. Of course, when I told my parents, their reactions were predictable. I called my mom, excited, my hand shaking as I held the phone. And she barely acknowledged the engagement before saying, "Wow, Paige. Julian must be doing very well. That ring sounds beautiful. I hope he's taking good care of you." My dad's response was almost identical. "Well, at least you won't have to worry about money anymore." They didn't ask about the proposal. They didn't ask about our wedding plans. They didn't even ask how I felt. It was all about Julian and what he could provide. At our engagement dinner, just a small thing at a local Italian restaurant, my mom leaned over to me while Julian was talking to my dad and whispered, "You know, Paige, Julian must have some successful friends. Brooke could really use someone like him. She's been so unlucky in love." I just stared at her. I felt my face get hot. I tried to brush it off as a one-time, tactless comment. But it wasn't. Every single time I talked to my mom after that, she'd find a way to bring it up. "Have you talked to Julian about introducing Brooke to anyone? Or, that startup world. Julian must know some people for Brooke. She's so smart, she just needs a break." It was like she couldn't stand the idea of me having anything, that Brooke didn't. The wedding planning process was a complete nightmare. My mom acted more excited about what Julian's side of the family was contributing than about the actual wedding. His parents were lovely and generous, and they insisted on paying for the venue. My mom would say things like, "Well, at least they're paying for the venue. That's nice of them." As if it wasn't my wedding, too. She argued with me about the color of the bridesmaid dresses because she thought Brooke looked washed out in pale yellow. It was all about Brooke. The wedding day itself was beautiful. Julian's family was wonderful, and the venue was perfect. But, of course, Brooke couldn't just let me have my moment. She showed up in this over-the-top, low-cut, bright red dress that looked more like something you'd wear to prom, not your sister's wedding. She spent half the night networking with Julian's friends and colleagues. I mean, literally handing out her business card. It was like she was trying to audition for a role in his life. And the comments, oh my God, the comments. She joked, loudly, about how lucky I was to find someone like Julian. She said things like, "Wow, Paige really hit the jackpot, didn't she?" And Julian must have a soft spot for hardworking women. I could just feel the backhanded compliments dripping with jealousy. For the first time, I wasn't the shadow. I was the one with a successful, supportive partner. And Brooke just could not handle it. I saw it in the way she acted around Julian, overly friendly, always laughing way too loud at his jokes, like they were the funniest thing in the world. At one point during the reception, I caught her cornering him by the bar, her hand on his arm. It just made my stomach turn. When I asked her later what they were talking about, she just shrugged and said, "Oh, nothing. Just thanking him for being so good to you." Yeah. Right. The honeymoon phase of my marriage was everything I wanted it to be. We went to Italy. We settled into a nice townhouse. Julian was busy with his startup, which was really taking off, and I was finishing my degree, still working at the boutique. For a little while, everything felt perfect. Normal. But my family's behavior just lingered in the back of my mind. My mom kept pushing me to involve Brooke in Julian's social circle. It was like she felt it was my responsibility, now that I'd made it, to find my sister a wealthy husband, too. I tried to talk to Julian about it. We'd be in bed, reading, and I'd say, "Doesn't it bother you that my mom is always trying to set Brooke up with your friends? It's so embarrassing." And he'd just shrug, not even looking up from his laptop. "She's just being a mom, Paige. It's not a big deal. Just ignore it." At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe I was just being too sensitive, too insecure. All those years of being second best had to have left a mark, right? But then I started noticing how Brooke treated me differently. She stopped pretending to be supportive. She started making these subtle, little digs about my relationship. If Julian posted something sweet about me online, a picture from our honeymoon, she'd leave a sarcastic comment like, "Guess we know who the favorite is now." Instead of celebrating with me, my family acted like I owed them something for my success. Like I'd taken something that was rightfully Brooke's. It was a strange, cold feeling. I should have trusted my instincts. I really should have seen all the warning signs. But at the time, I was just so happy to finally be happy. I was just trying to enjoy this new chapter of my life, even if it meant ignoring the cracks that were starting to form right under the surface. About a month into our marriage, Brooke started showing up, unannounced. And when I say showing up, I don't mean popping by for a quick hello. I mean waltzing into my home like it was hers. She'd arrive mid-afternoon, always overdressed for no apparent reason. We're talking heels, a designer bag, a full face of makeup. It wasn't like we lived in some fancy neighborhood. Our townhouse was in a quiet, suburban area, and most of our neighbors were the yoga pants and messy bun type. Brooke looked like she was heading to a nightclub. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she just wants to spend more time with me, I thought. But no, she wasn't coming to see me. She'd barely say hello to me. She'd spend most of her time hovering around Julian. He loved to cook. He'd come home from work and make homemade pasta. It was his thing. And Brooke would just linger in the kitchen while he cooked. She'd be perched on a bar stool, wine glass in hand, laughing at his jokes like she was auditioning for a rom-com. It made me so uncomfortable. I remember one day, I was in the living room, just trying to fold laundry and watch TV. I had a long day, and I could hear them in the kitchen. Julian was explaining how he made his bolognese sauce, and Brooke was laughing so loudly you'd think he was a stand-up comedian. It wasn't just a polite chuckle. It was that kind of laugh. The kind that makes your stomach twist because you know it's not about the joke. It's performative. I told Julian how I felt. I waited until she left, and I even tried to make it sound casual. I said something like, "Hey, I love that Brooke's visiting, but maybe it's a little much. She's here almost every day." He just shrugged again. That same dismissive shrug. "She's your sister, Paige. She's probably just lonely." Lonely? Brooke wasn't lonely. She was bored. And she was calculating. There's a very big difference. Things escalated when she started coming over even more frequently. Once, I came home from a late shift at the boutique, just exhausted. My feet were killing me. I walked in to find her sitting on our couch with Julian, eating takeout from our favorite place. They were watching a movie like they were having a little date night. I just stood in the doorway. "What's going on?" Brooke just smiled, that sweet, fake smile. "Oh, I was in the neighborhood and figured I'd keep Julian company since you were working so late." "You work so hard, Paige." That's when I started to notice other things. Little, tiny things. Brooke had this knack for finding reasons to touch Julian. Fixing his tie when it wasn't crooked. Brushing imaginary lint off his shoulder. Leaning in just a little too close when she talked to him. Julian didn't seem to notice. Or, at least, he pretended not to. He'd just laugh it off, lapping up the attention. One night, everything came crashing down. I had just gotten home from another long shift. I was tired, my feet hurt, and I just wanted to take a bath. I walked into the house, and it was quiet. But then I heard them in the kitchen. Brooke was laughing again. That same laugh. I stood there in the hallway, completely frozen. My coat was still on. I just listened. I finally worked up the courage to walk in, and there they were. Brooke was perched on one of the bar stools, leaning so far forward, while Julian stood across from her with a stupid, happy grin on his face. I don't even remember what they were talking about. All I remember is how my heart just sank into my stomach. The way they looked at each other. Later that night, after she finally left, I confronted Julian. I was shaking. I said, "What is going on with you and Brooke?" He looked at me like I was crazy. Genuinely baffled. "What do you mean?" "She's your sister." "Exactly," I said, my voice rising. "She's my sister. So why does it feel like she's here for you and not for me? Why does it feel like I'm interrupting something in my own home?" He denied everything. He said I was overthinking it. He said I was being insecure. He said Brooke was just friendly and that I needed to relax. He made me feel like I was the bad guy. "Paige, you're being crazy," he said. "You're just insecure because she's your sister." But I couldn't shake the feeling. I just knew something was off. The final straw came a few weeks later. Julian started coming home late. He always had an excuse. Work dinners. Late meetings. Had to run errands. He became distant. He stopped asking about my day. One night, he walked in the door at nearly midnight. He was trying to be quiet, but he stumbled over the rug. He smelled like perfume. And not just any perfume. It was something strong, floral, and sweet, like jasmine and vanilla. I'm a perfumer. I know every scent in my collection. I know what I wear. I know what my sister wears. And that was not one of mine. I didn't even have to ask. I was sitting on the stairs in the dark, waiting for him. I just looked at him. He admitted it before I could even get the words out. Paige, he said, and he couldn't even look me in the eye. He just stared at the floor. Brooke and I, we're in love. In love. Those two words they hit me like a freight train. My sister. My husband. I couldn't even process it. All I could think was, how? When? Why? I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood there, staring at him, while he mumbled something about how these things just happen, and he didn't mean for it to happen. I felt like I was watching my entire life unravel in real time. The next day, I was desperate. I was in a complete state of shock. I packed a small bag. I just needed somewhere to stay, just for a few days, while I figured out what to do. So I called my parents. My mom answered the phone, cheerful as ever. Hi, honey. We never hear from you. And I just broke down. I was sobbing, unable to breathe. I told her everything. Mom, Julian and Brooke, they're together. They're in love. I need to come home. Just for a little while, please. There was a pause. A long, cold silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't the shocked silence of a mother hearing her daughter's world has fallen apart. It was a calculating silence. Then she said, "Oh, honey. That's terrible. But I'd love to help, I really would, but the house is under renovation right now. It's just such a mess. We don't have a place for you." Renovation? They had lived in that house for 25 years and had never renovated a single thing. What renovation? I asked. Oh, she stammered, the kitchen. And the guest bathroom. It's not a good time. I was confused, but I was too distraught to argue. I hung up and called my dad on his cell. I thought, he'll help me. He gave me the exact same line. It's just not a good time, sweetheart. Your mother's right, the house is a disaster. You know how it is. I hung up the phone. And I just sat there, staring at the wall of our guest bedroom. My parents had never really been there for me. Not really. But this was a new low. I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal from Julian and Brooke. I was being completely and totally abandoned by my entire family. I spent that night alone, scrolling through apartment listings I couldn't possibly afford, and wondering how I had gotten to this point. I felt completely, utterly alone. It took weeks. Weeks of me overthinking, replaying every single conversation, every interaction in my head, for me to finally put the pieces together. My parents had known. They had known about Brooke and Julian's affair the whole time. They weren't just passively unaware. They had actively supported it. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Who would? But all the signs were there, glaringly obvious now that I looked back. My parents brushing off my calls when I begged for a place to stay. My mom's vague, stupid excuses about the renovation. My dad's awkward, guilty tone, like he was trying to avoid saying too much. They hadn't been protecting me. They had been protecting her. Brooke. Their golden child. She could do no wrong in their eyes. Even when she stabbed her own sister in the back, they still prioritized her comfort over my pain. They didn't want me moving in because it would have been too messy for them. They didn't want to deal with the fallout of their blatant, lifelong favoritism. I filed for divorce. I had to scrape together the last of my savings to get a lawyer. It was humiliating. The process went quickly, mostly because Julian had already had me sign a prenup before we got married. I was young, in love, and stupid. I didn't even read it. My lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Gable, looked at me over her glasses and said, "Paige, this is ironclad. He had you sign away everything. You're not entitled to any part of his business or the house. I walked away from that marriage with absolutely nothing but my clothes and my old car. After everything fell apart, I was living in this tiny, awful, one-room apartment across town. I was desperate for some kind of support, some kind of clarity. I felt like I was going crazy. So, I reached out to Julian's parents. I didn't do it to air our dirty laundry. I wanted to let them know what happened. I thought maybe they could make sense of it. His mom was surprisingly kind to me. She was quiet on the phone, and then she admitted that she had her doubts about Brooke from the very start. She said, "Paige, I'm so sorry. I always thought Brooke seemed too eager. Even at the wedding. It was a small comfort, but it was something. It meant I wasn't crazy." But apparently, Julian didn't see it that way. He found out I had contacted his family, and he was furious. He called me, screaming, accusing me of trying to turn them against him. He claimed I was the one stirring up drama and ruining his reputation. The irony was just breathtaking. He was the one who had an affair with his wife's sister, but I was ruining his reputation. As if that wasn't bad enough, Julian decided to take things a step further. It wasn't enough that he had destroyed my trust, my marriage, and my family. He decided to ruin my career, too. I found out when I showed up for my shift at the boutique one morning. I was just trying to keep my head down, just trying to survive. I needed that job. It was my only source of income. But I was called into the manager's office. My boss, who had always been so supportive of me, suddenly couldn't make eye contact. She just handed me a final paycheck and muttered something about restructuring and how things just weren't working out. It didn't make any sense. I was their best employee. I loved that job. Until a coworker, a girl I was friendly with, let it slip later. She texted me, "Paige, it was Julian. He's friends with the owner. He told him you were unstable and causing drama that was bad for business. He had poisoned them against me." I was furious. I wanted to storm into his office, scream at him, demand answers. But I didn't. What was the point? He wasn't worth it. For days, I just sat in my new tiny apartment, staring at the walls. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. Rent was due soon, and without a job, I had no idea how I was going to pay it. I felt like the universe had just ripped away every single thing I had ever worked for. I was completely at rock bottom. But then one night, something just clicked. I was sitting there, broke and alone, scrolling through Instagram. Just looking at pictures of people I didn't even know, living lives I couldn't afford. And I stumbled on a post about small businesses. It was a woman who had started her own candle-making company out of her kitchen. She talked about how she'd turned her passion into a career and built something from the ground up. I sat there, holding my phone, and I just thought, why not me? I had always dreamed of starting my own perfume line, but I'd kept pushing it aside. I didn't think I was ready. I didn't think I was good enough. Well, if there was ever a time to take a risk, it was now. I had absolutely nothing left to lose. I took out a small, high-interest loan. It was just enough to cover the basics. I used what little savings I had left, and my tiny apartment became my workspace. My dining table was my lab. I spent my days and nights experimenting, mixing essential oils, trying to create something unique. I had my old notebooks from college, filled with formulas and ideas. I started small. I opened an online shop. I posted on social media. I used my waitress job money to buy supplies. I sent samples to anyone I thought might listen, tiny little vials with handwritten labels. For months, nothing. Just a few small orders from friends. I was getting worried. I was running out of money. And then, word started to spread. One day, a small beauty blogger with a decent following posted a review. She raved about how unique my scents were, how they told a story. She said they weren't like the mass-produced stuff in stores. Overnight, my Instagram blew up. Orders started coming in. First 1 or 2 a day, then 10, then 50. I was packing boxes on my apartment floor until 3 a.m., my hands covered in tape. The second year was the turning point. I started getting inquiries from small boutiques, the same kind of places I used to work, that wanted to carry my perfumes. I finally had enough money to rent a real studio in town. It was a far cry from working at my dining table. It wasn't much, just a room with enough space for my supplies and a little corner to meet clients. I even hired an assistant, Riley, to help with the growing workload. By the end of that second year, I was profitable. Not just scraping by, but actually making enough to live comfortably and plan for the future. My perfumes were being talked about in small magazines and blogs. Customers from all over the country were placing orders. This business, it wasn't just a way to pay the bills. It was my way of taking back control of my life. Every single bottle of perfume I created felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was capable of building something beautiful from the ashes of everything I'd lost. Then, out of nowhere, she came back. It was one of those rainy, miserable Tuesday afternoons. You just want to curl up with a cup of coffee and not deal with anyone. I was in my studio, which was now a nice, bright space downtown. I was packing up a big order for a boutique in Seattle. I heard the little bell on the door jingle. At first, I thought it was Riley, my assistant, coming back from Starbucks. Or maybe just a customer wandering in to browse. But nope. It was her. It was Brooke. And she had a baby in her arms. I just froze. I stood there, holding a roll of packing tape. She looked awful. I mean, we're talking a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, a soaked-through coat, and a baby bundled up in a onesie that had clearly seen better days. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Because why in the world would she be here? At my studio? But nope. It was real. "Paige," she said. Her voice was all shaky and thin. I didn't know where else to go. I just stood there, staring at her. It had been 2 years. 2 whole years since I'd last seen her. The last time was at some family gathering right after my divorce, where she and Julian were parading around like the king and queen of everything. Now, she looked like life had kicked her down a few hundred notches. "What do you want, Brooke?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice calm, even. She shifted the baby in her arms, and he started to fuss. She gave me this pitiful, pleading look. "I need help," she said finally. Julian left. I don't have anyone else to turn to. I swear. I almost laughed. I actually almost laughed out loud. Julian left her. Wow. Shocking. Who could have possibly predicted that one? Oh, right. Literally everyone except her. "Julian left you?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Gee, I wonder why." She winced, but she didn't argue. "Paige, please. I know I've made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to go." And then she said it. She played her last card. "This is your nephew," she added, motioning to the baby. "Don't you want to meet him?" "My nephew." "Right." I glanced at the baby. He looked innocent enough. But then I looked back at Brooke. The same sister who had blown up my life without a second thought. And any tiny scrap of sympathy I might have felt just disappeared. "Why don't you call Julian?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Isn't this his kid? Isn't this the baby you had with him?" Her face turned bright red, and she started stammering. "Well, no. He's not." Of course, he wasn't. It all came spilling out after that. Apparently, after Brooke won Julian, she realized he wasn't exactly the dream husband she'd imagined. Sure, he had money, but he was also, in her words, controlling and kind of a jerk. Shocking. He apparently had rules about where she could go and what she could spend. So, naturally, she started cheating on him. But she kept draining his bank account to fund her lifestyle. Luxury bags, trips, all of it. But when Julian found out she was cheating and that the baby wasn't his, he cut her off completely. Canceled her credit cards, kicked her out of the house, and filed for his own divorce. Since then, she'd been trying to keep up appearances. Buying designer clothes on clearance, posting old vacation photos to make it look like her life was still perfect. But you can only fake it for so long. And when she came to me that day, she was absolutely, completely falling apart. "Paige, please," she begged, and now the tears were streaming down her face. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm begging you. I have no money, no home, nothing. I can't do this on my own." I just stared at her. Part of me wanted to scream, "Are you kidding me?" The same sister who took my husband, ruined my marriage, and acted like I was nothing, is now standing in my studio, the business I built from scratch, begging me for help? "You have some nerve," I said finally. My voice was cold. I didn't recognize it. "You didn't care about me or my life when you were blowing it all up. But now that your life is a mess, you want me to bail you out." She started sobbing harder. And honestly, I wasn't moved. This wasn't new. Brooke had always been good at turning on the waterworks to get what she wanted. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said again, her voice muffled by her sobs. "That's not my problem," I replied. "You made your choices, Brooke. Now live with them. Or go to your lovely parents. Just stay the hell out of my life. All of you." I walked to the door, opened it, and motioned for her to leave. The rain was lashing in. She hesitated, standing there like she thought I'd suddenly change my mind. But when she saw I wasn't budging, she clutched the baby tighter and walked out into the rain without another word. As the door shut behind her, I stood there for a minute, just letting it all sink in. I didn't feel bad. Not really. Maybe for the baby, sure, but not for her. If you are still listening to this, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below. It lets me know that you're this amazing, and I understand that you're with me on this whole journey. Your support is a huge encouragement. It cheers me on. Please comment the number 1 so I can recognize you, and now listen to what happened next. I went back to my desk and tried to focus on work, but my brain just wouldn't shut up. I kept thinking about how far I'd come since the mess she'd made of my life. 2 years ago, her showing up like that would have broken me. But now, I just felt free. I don't owe Brooke anything. She made her bed. She can lie in it. I've spent way too much of my life trying to clean up after her messes, and I'm done. I've always believed in karma. I've always believed that what you put out into the world, good or bad, eventually finds its way back to you. It might not come immediately, and it might not come in the way you expect, but eventually, people get what's coming to them. And let me tell you, karma didn't just knock on the doors of my former family. It kicked them clean off the hinges. The first domino to fall, and the one that gave me the most complicated sense of, let's call it closure, was Julian. After he threw Brooke out, she didn't just go quietly into the night. Oh no, that's not Brooke's style. She decided that if she was going down, she was going to burn his entire kingdom to the ground with her. She went on a social media rampage. And I'm not talking about a few vague, sad posts. I'm talking about a full-on, scorched earth campaign. She posted long, dramatic rants, complete with teary-eyed selfies, about how Julian had emotionally abused her, how he controlled her every move, how he was a monster who locked her away and treated her like property. She never once mentioned that she had been cheating on him, or that she was the one living off his money while stabbing him in the back. In her version of the story, she was the victim. The thing is, in the tech world, in the world of venture capital and finance where Julian lived, image is everything. Investors weren't just putting money into his startup, they were putting money into him. They needed to trust him. And suddenly, this man they saw as a polished, brilliant innovator was being exposed online as a volatile, controlling, alleged abuser. My assistant, Riley, was the one who showed me the first article. She came into the studio one morning, holding her phone. Paige, you might want to see this." It was a local business journal, and the headline read, "Local tech CEO embroiled in messy public dispute." People talk. And word spreads fast in his industry. The drama, as he had once called my pain, was now toxic. Potential investors, the ones he needed for his next round of funding, backed out. They didn't want their names associated with that kind of public relations nightmare. His business partners, the ones who had clapped him on the back at our wedding, stopped answering his calls. His reputation, the thing he valued above all else, the thing he had accused me of trying to ruin, completely tanked. Julian wasn't the saint he pretended to be, and people were finally starting to see it. Last I heard, from that same aunt who still calls me with gossip, he had to sell his company. He didn't sell it for $1 billion payout. He sold it for way less than it was worth, just to cut his losses, pay off his mounting debts, and disappear. And then, one day, he showed up. I was in my new studio, the one I'd just expanded into. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. The whole front of the shop is glass, and the light was streaming in. I was working at my blending table, testing a new citrus blend. I was happy. I was at peace. The bell on the door jingled. I looked up, expecting to see Riley or a customer. But it was him. It was Julian. I hadn't seen him in person in almost 3 years. He looked different. He was still tall, but he seemed smaller. The polish was gone. His suit was wrinkled, he looked tired, and he had this sad, almost desperate energy about him. He just stood there for a minute, looking around at my shop. At the full shelves, the busy packing station, the beautiful labels I had designed myself. "Wow, Paige," he said, his voice soft. This is amazing. You've done really well." I didn't say anything. I just put down the glass vial I was holding and crossed my arms. "What do you want, Julian?" He took a few steps in, running his hand over a wooden display case. I was in the neighborhood. I just wanted to see." He trailed off, then he looked at me. "I made a mistake, Paige. A terrible, terrible mistake." I just stared at him. "She ruined my life," he said, and now his voice was bitter. "Brooke. She ruined everything. She lied, she just destroyed me. Everything I built." "You built that part yourself, Julian," I said, my voice cold and even. "No, Paige, you don't understand," he said, walking closer. "I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. You and we were good. You were real. I missed this. The way things used to be. How supportive you were." He was standing right in front of my table now. "I was hoping," he said, looking at me with those same eyes I used to love, "I was hoping maybe we could start over. Just talk. Get dinner. I'm different now, Paige. I've learned." I let the silence hang in the air for a long, heavy moment. I let him stand there in the sunlight of the beautiful life I had built without him. The life I had built despite him. Finally, I picked up my glass vial again. I didn't even look at him. I just looked at the oil. "Julian," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I built myself a whole new life. A life that I love. A life that is mine. And there is no space for you in it. Not for dinner. Not for talk. Not for anything." I looked up at him. "You need to leave. Now." The audacity of that man. To come into my space, my business, the one he tried to destroy, and ask for a second chance? The look on his face, it wasn't anger. It was just defeat. He nodded slowly, turned around, and walked out the door. The bell jingled. And I just went back to work. As for Brooke, her downfall was less dramatic, but in a way more complete. After Julian kicked her out, she apparently tried to get a lawyer and sue him for emotional distress, but she had no money. The baby's real father was, apparently, just some guy she'd met at a bar, and he was long gone. She had nowhere to go. Except, of course, back to Mom and Dad. But that's a whole other story. Eventually, even that didn't last. My aunt told me she had to move into a small, government-subsidized apartment in a not-so-great part of town. The kind of neighborhood she used to make fun of. And her job? She now works at a call center. A call center. This is the woman who had an MBA, who was supposed to be the successful one. She now spends her days getting screamed at by angry customers about their phone bills. The exact kind of job she used to mock people for having. She spends most of her time ranting on social media about how unfair life is. She blames everyone but herself for how things turned out. The worst part is, she still tries to act superior. She's always posting these passive-aggressive quotes, things like, "Some people are so lucky, they just have everything handed to them. But I guess not everyone deserves it." I read that one and I almost laughed. Handed to me? I had to claw my way out of the pit they dug for me. But I didn't comment. I just hit block. I blocked her and I blocked him. And I finally, truly, shut that door forever. And my parents? Oh, they didn't come out of this unscathed either. When Brooke's life started completely falling apart, when she showed up on their doorstep with a baby and a mountain of credit card debt, they did what they always do. They bailed her out. They chose her. Again. My aunt, who is a notorious gossip but apparently my only source of information, called me one Tuesday. "Paige," she said, her voice low, "I don't know if I should be telling you this, but your parents sold the house." Sold the house. The house I grew in. The house they had lived in for over 25 years. The house they took so much pride in. Why? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Well, my aunt said, it was Brooke. She had issues. She owed a lot of money. She had lawyer bills from trying to get custody of the baby, and she had just so many debts. Your parents, they used the money to cover everything for her. They sold their home, their retirement, their future, to clean up their golden child's mess. They moved into a cramped condo on the outskirts of town. A 2-bedroom place in one of those beige buildings with no personality. A far cry from the home they once took so much pride in. I heard they're struggling financially now. My dad, who was supposed to be retired, had to pick up part-time work as a delivery driver. My mom, who always prided herself on being a lady of leisure, started sewing alterations out of their living room to make ends meet. They haven't called me once. Not one single time to apologize. Not to acknowledge what happened. Not to say, "We are so sorry, we failed you as parents." Instead, they send these weird, guilt-trippy emails every few months. They always start the same way. "Dear Paige." And then it's just a long, rambling paragraph about how hard life is and how they're getting older. And they always end with the same line. "Family is all we have, Paige. You should reach out sometime. Family is all we have." The irony. But you know what? I read those emails and I delete them. I don't feel bad. Not for any of them. They made their choices. They chose their favorite. And now they are living with the consequences of that choice. They made their bed. They can lie in it. All of them. As for me, things couldn't be better. My business is thriving in ways I never could have imagined. That little studio I rented? Last year, I opened my first real storefront. A cozy, beautiful little shop in Chicago. It's on a street with old brick buildings and big trees. It smells like sandalwood and bergamot the second you walk in. It's been a hit. We've got customers coming in from all over the country, drawn by our personalized approach to creating scents. We do scent profiles for people. We sit with them, we talk to them, and we create something that is uniquely theirs. I'm not just selling perfume. I'm selling a feeling. The feeling of being seen. The feeling I never had. And my assistant, Riley? She's my full-time shop manager now, and I'm looking to hire 2 more people for the holidays. It's not just a salary anymore. It's my life, and it's my passion. And on a personal note, I've also moved on in the best way possible. I'm now engaged to a man named Trevor. He's a high school history teacher. He's kind, he's patient, he's funny, and he thinks what I do is the coolest thing in the world. He isn't wealthy. He doesn't run a startup. And he is the most supportive, wonderful man I've ever met. We met at a farmer's market. I was buying lavender for the shop, and he was next to me, trying to figure out what a kohlrabi was. He made a joke, and it was just easy. There were no games. No pretense. He just saw me. We're planning our wedding for next spring. A small ceremony in the park with close friends and a few family members. And by family, I mean the chosen kind. The friends who sat with me in my tiny apartment when I had nothing. The ones who helped me pack boxes when my business first took off. Not the ones who stabbed me in the back. We've already joked about how the reception will smell amazing. Because, of course, I'm custom blending a scent just for the day. It's going to have notes of peony and clean cotton and green tea. It's the scent of a fresh start. Anyway, that's my story. Life's a lot better when you cut out the toxicity and focus on yourself. I'm in such a good, happy, peaceful place now, and honestly, I wouldn't change a single thing. It all led me right here. To this shop. To Trevor. To this life. Thanks for reading. Thanks for listening. It's been my little therapy session. If my story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt like the backup plan, please leave a like or share your own thoughts below. It really does help to know you're not alone.